to introduce Victoria Pentastel. This is Ellie from the Fraser Valley Forage region.
Imagine you're walking around the supermarket. Here are a few standard items you might pick up. Orange juice, tomatoes, mixed greens, and yogurt. You get to the supermarket, place them all in a plastic bag before you take them home. That all sounds pretty average to me. Now, let's analyze these items that we bought. They all have something in common. They are all surrounded by plastic packaging. Now, when you picked up these items, you probably took a look at the nutritional facts. The fat, the sugar, the calories for your own health. But what you also need to look out for is the health of the planet too. When these items are empty, we throw them away, we recycle them, and that's it. Look at the amount of excess plastic that went away so quickly. Is there a way of avoiding all of this? And what are the consequences of where all this plastic goes? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honourable judges, Madam Chairperson, parents, leaders, and fellow forage members. We cannot live without food, and while we are of course consumers of food, we are indirectly consumers of plastic too. The packaging around food is causing a huge problem, and I, like many others, didn't realise the amount of plastic we are consuming every day through the foods we buy. But before I talk more in depth about food and packaging, I need to make one point clear. There is nothing inherently wrong with plastic. It's simply the way that we use it that needs adjusting. If we can learn how to reduce the plastics in our day-to-day lives and then responsibly dispose of the plastics we cannot avoid, together we can deal with the growing issues associated with them. Let's briefly take a look at what plastic actually is. Plastic is a chemically man-made created substance that through the application of heat and pressure can be shaped and molded. Different plastics are formed for different purposes, created using different methods, and can be found everywhere. Now, what is the problem with plastic? Certain forms of plastic are extremely strong and hard to break down, and because we are overrun by way too much of it, we cannot properly dispose of it all. Certain forms of plastic are extremely strong, and because they're chemically made to be resilient against the pressure trying to break it, it takes an extremely long time to decompose. One plastic water bottle like this, for example, can take up to 450 years to fully decompose. The landfills begin to stack up and overfill. Natural factors including wind and rain carry large amounts of this plastic away from the landfills, and much of this ends up in the ocean. Other times, plastic is dumped in the ocean because there's no other feasible way at that place or at that time to dispose of it otherwise. I'm sure you've all heard of the plastic continent or the plastic guy. The plastic continent, called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, is a huge concentration of plastic debris pulled together by the currents of the water floating in the Pacific Ocean. This guy was measured to be equal to the size of Texas. Well, you may be surprised to hear there are in fact 5 of these guys floating in the oceans of our world. Now, if you take a look closely, you might notice something quite interesting at what makes up these guys. A lot of this plastic is undeniably packaging, specifically food packaging, and you can recognize some of the brands you might buy. As I mentioned before, we do have the resources to dispose of this kind of plastic. The problem is we are overrun by way too much of it, and our problem has spiraled out of control. Let's look at a few statistics. Since the 1950s, over 9 billion tons of plastic have been generated worldwide. Only 9% of all this plastic has been recycled. 2.8 million tons of plastic produced in Canada every year end up in our landfills. And currently, 3.3 million tons of plastic in Canada produced in Canada every year, and currently only 11% of these plastics are recycled. 85% or 2.8 million tons of plastic ends up in our landfills. To put this into perspective, this is equal to the weight of 24 CN towers every single year. Canadians produce more excess packaging per person than any other country in the world, and 40% of this plastic is generated for packaging. While all of these statistics are staggering, today I'm going to be focusing on that last 40% statistic. That 40% that is packaging, a lot of it from food, is something that we can all make a difference to change. Specifically, I'm talking about reducing plastics from our own personal food waste. How can we change the ways we grocery shop to reduce these excess plastics? There are many different ways, varying from very simple to very extreme. Let me share with you some of the simplest ways you can make a difference. Buy bulk. Try to buy in large containers in the bulk section rather than individually packaged items. Take a look and see how much excess plastic there is around these single items. Yogurt in the singles or in the tub. What about cheese slices with plastic wrap around each individual slice and then around the group with plastic over the top? The thing about buying in singles is that there's almost always an option to buy in a larger container which has overall less plastic. Look out for them. The naked veggies. Now you might be wondering and you might be a little bit concerned as to what these are. Don't worry, naked veggies are simply vegetables without any packaging. This would be a clothed veggie, and this would be a naked veggie. These can often be found in the produce aisle or at alternative shopping places, which I'll talk about in a minute. And if there isn't the naked veggie option, ask yourself if you can substitute for a different veggie that does come in this option. Choose those with less packaging whenever you have this choice. Big organic, starting your own garden. This may be seen as a bit of a step up from the other simple tips, but starting or improving your own garden is fun and rewarding. Digging in the dirt has been shown to decrease depression levels, lower your chances of dementia, improve your mental health, and make you feel happier and more productive. It's always fun to experiment to see what works in your type of soil or your local area. My family had some great successes where I live down in the Fraser Valley with lettuce, potatoes, and herbs. Some total failures with tomatoes too, but that's all part of the fun. Avoid the stickers. You may be thinking I've gone a little bit too far with this one. What harm could a little sticker do? Well, it's precisely the size, so small, that is the problem. At garbage disposal plants, the little stickers get caught and cause problems with the machinery. Additionally, they can easily make their way into waterways and begin to clog up the pipes and the drainage. Plus, they will not decompose in the compost. Try to avoid them, little stickers with such great powers. Bag up. Bring your own reusable containers and bags. When you shop, avoid using single-use plastic containers. Bring your own instead. You can purchase or even make your own reusable produce bag at home. Not only is it better at preserving the goodness of the food, but it does look very fashionable too. Buy local. Support your local producers. Not only is shopping at farmers markets a fun experience, it also encourages healthy eating. There aren't the distractions like at supermarkets of junk food, and at a farmers market, there is this direct connection between the producer and the consumer. You know where the food came from, you know who grew it, and you know exactly what it is. And when it isn't the season for farmers markets, source out your local producers and see what they have available to offer. Amongst our own 4-H communities, there are loads of different farms you can get in contact with and see what they have available. Take this opportunity to lower your plastics to lead to a healthy eating life as well, and to support your local farmers. Now, of course, I know it is really hard to buy all the kinds of food that you need without plastic or find them at these places. To eat in a similar way to how we did before, we do still have to shop at the supermarkets and purchase packaged items. What we need to learn to do, however, is to be good environmental stewards and to responsibly recycle and dispose of the plastics we cannot avoid. Did you know that in Canada, even what is designated as recycling is not always recycled and ends up in landfills, dumps, or floating in the ocean instead? This is because many plastics are wrongly recycled and do not follow the guidelines. For example, when the recycling arrives at the recycling centre, the workers might realise that the truck's contents are not solely recyclable and other plastics have been wrongly sorted in. And since there aren't enough resources or the workers to properly sort the plastics from therein, the whole lot has to end up in this landfill instead. This is something that we can all work to change. If we learn how to properly recycle our plastics, then a whole lot more of it will end up being recycled. And that's what I hope to teach you today. It's all about the chasing arrows. Many people have seen this sign before. It's called the SPI, Society of the Plastics Industry Resin Code Identification Chart, or the chasing arrows as I like to call it. Most often the symbol is clear and found on the bottom of your packaging. But what will surprise a lot of people is that this symbol with a number inside does not mean that an item is recyclable. No, it's a bit more complicated than that. There are 7 different numbers in total, each with a few capital letters below. And each indicates a different type of polymer the plastic is made from. Not all of these numbers can be recycled. It really depends on where you live as to what you can or cannot recycle, and your local regulations will tell you what they do accept. Since I live back home in the Fraser Valley, I'll demonstrate to you what we're allowed to do there, but it is generally consistent across all of British Columbia. I'll briefly take you through what each of these numbers indicates, how to properly read the chasing arrows, dispose of your recycling correctly, and flip your hand. Now, it can be a little hard, I know, to remember to always turn over the item and check to see what type of plastic it is made from. To help me remember, I came up with a short rhyme that helps me. Flip your hand, save our land. It works every time. Now, let's get started. The only materials you need to recycle your plastic are an SPI resin code identification chart. Here's an example of one. It has right here the different types of plastic with the different numbers, the correct name, some of the properties they have, as well as some of the common places you will find them. You can easily find one online too, and it is pretty easy to remember. I'm sure you'll all get the hang of it very quickly. You are also going to need your own plastics to recycle. I've brought a few from my home to demonstrate to you. And you're finally going to need somewhere to recycle these into. I've labeled 2 different boxes which we can sort these into, the blue car or the recycling, or the grey car or the other garbage. Now, let's start. Number 1, this is labeled PETE or sometimes PET, standing for polyphenylene terephthalate. It is a clear plastic, most often found in juice containers, bakery items, or fresh fruit packaging. In the Fraser Valley, number 1s are recyclable. Flip your hand, check the number, 1, save our land. Orange juice, bakery items, fruit packaging. Number 2, labeled HDPE, is heavy and thick and most prominently found in milk jugs. HDPE can be recycled here too. Flip your hand, number 2, save our land. Oh, the troublesome 3s. The V underneath the symbol stands for polyvinyl chloride. It is rigid and strong and used in pipes, vinyl siding, plastic fences, and more. You are highly unlikely to find any food packaging with this number 3 symbol. Check to see if they can be recycled in your neighborhood, but it is highly likely they cannot. LDPE is number 4. It is a low-density polyethylene most often found in plastic bags, produce bags, or other forms of bags. Yeah. Number 4s can usually be recycled. Propylene is number 5 with a PP symbol. You're likely to come across this one a lot when recycling food-related items. It is a rigid plastic used in yogurt, as well as in prepared food items. Number 5s can usually be recycled as well. Flip your hand, save our hand. Number 6, PS, is the one that you will come across a lot when it comes to plastic containers, utensils, or takeaway food containers. Number 6s are not recycled in the Fraser Valley. Check the number, flip your hand, save our land. And these ones go in the garbage. And finally, number 7 is other. This contains any plastics that do not fit into the other categories, and it isn't recyclable. Every time you make the decision to not buy food in plastic, to shop locally, or to use your reusable bag, you are making a difference. You're making a choice that directly impacts our planet for the better every single time. In our own small way, we can make a difference that goes a long way. Now, remember, before recycling, check to see what type of plastic an item is made from. Flip your hand, save our land. Thank you. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Yes?
You mentioned that food containers and packaging accounts for about 40% of plastics that are created in the world. What accounts for the other 60%?
The question has been asked, if 40% counts for packaging, what accounts for the other 60%? That's a really good question. I would say things, for example, I'm thinking of things that are made of plastic, like beach balls. You might find at the beach. Or what else? You can look around us and see what we have. So containers would not be included. There are many things around us that we don't realize are actually made of plastic. So you might find like signs that are made of plastic, other things. Yeah, so I'm not totally sure, but there's certainly a large quantity of them. Does that sort of answer your question?
It does, yes. I'm looking around the room, seeing a few items right now.
All right. Are there any questions? Yes.
I also come from the Fraser Valley. We're not allowed to put our plastic bags into the blue bin.
The point has been made available that you're not allowed to recycle plastic bags into the blue bin. That is correct. Quite a few places don't recycle the plastic bags, but on a whole, number 4s are recycled, which is why in this demonstration I'm showing you that yes, you can recycle number 4s, but you are correct that plastic bags are not recyclable here. Yes.
So then where could I take them?
Question has been asked, where could you take them? You could otherwise just put them in the garbage. There are other programs available across Canada. There's one called the Gimme 5s, and I think there's one called the Gimme 4s as well, which collects the plastics that you cannot recycle in your area. And you can find them often outside of supermarkets, and they'll have boxes available, which you can put that type of plastic into, and then they will recycle it for you at centers that might not be available to you in your area. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Are there any further questions? If there are no further questions, then this concludes my speaking show. Flip your hand, save our land. Thank you.